I don't think that this is true. We can all know if somebody draws a stick figure. The ball python breeding hobby has an amazing community that is incredibly supportive, and you can make some lifelong friends inside of it. But when it comes to the business side, there is 1000% an aspect of competition where you are going to be competing against your friends in order to sell your animals. So there are 5 different ways, in my opinion, that you as a ball python breeder can potentially outcompete everybody else, even if those people are the biggest names, the biggest breeders, and the leaders of the industry. Anyways, my name's Steven with Leviathan, and let's get to it. Before we dive into the 5 different ways that I think a new ball python breeder can outcompete everybody else, we need to understand that there are different niches within the ball python hobby. If you are focusing on pet keepers and pet owners, that is a completely different approach than somebody who is focusing on high-end investment breeders. And if you specialize in one of these areas, it's very, very likely that you will not be as competitive in the other, because they require different values, they require different marketing, and they require different animals. So when we talk about all of these different concepts, we want to apply them to the specific niche that you are targeting. First way to outcompete everybody else is, in my opinion, the best way, but also the most difficult of all of them to achieve, and that is to be significantly more original than everyone else. And when I say significantly more original, it is very, very common in the ball python world for people to have very similar names, very similar logos, and ultimately very similar animals that they are producing. And this doesn't mean that every single gene that you are working with is the exact same as everybody else, but if you are looking at the types of animals you are making, let's say multi-recessive animals with some incomplete dominant genes, and you are trying to focus on the high-end side of the market, everybody else is doing this too. So if you can find avenues in order to be significantly more original than everyone else, it is going to make you stand out. And when people think about whatever it is that you are doing, they are going to think about you specifically first, and they're not going to be searching through a sea of morph market listings in order to find what you have available, because they're going to seek you out directly. So, as a real-world example of being significantly more original than everybody else, right now in the high-end side of the ball python breeding world, the vast majority of the focus is centered on multi-recessive projects. And there's a really good reason for this that we're going to discuss later on in this video, but if everybody is working on triple, quad, penta-recessive projects, eventually what's going to end up happening is that everybody is going to have a triple recessive, everybody is going to have a quad recessive, and certainly everybody's going to have a visual double het or double visual het or things like that, to the point where these animals are no longer exceptional, even if they are really, really difficult to make. Instead, they are going to be the baseline, and therefore it's not going to be original, and it's not something that's going to make you truly stand out from everybody else. Now, I'm not saying to completely abandon multi-recessive projects. We definitely are not. They are a core focus of our breeding strategy. But if you want to be original, just simply trying to find the next 3 different recessive genes that you think nobody else is working on isn't enough, in my opinion. Instead, if you are looking at the specific animals and the specific genes, I think that you are going to get a lot more bang for your buck, even though they're really, really expensive, if you are able to find a somewhat brand new gene like Cosmos, like Malice, like things like this, and then become known for that gene and become one of the key players in those projects, because that's something that everybody else in the ball python breeding hobby are not going to be able to do, because those animals are so rare, and there's no way that you can just combine some other genes and make a brand new Cosmos animal unless you have Cosmos to begin with. Now, you might be thinking that you don't have money for Cosmos, because we certainly don't have money for Cosmos. So there are other avenues that you can do with this as well. And you can go through Morph Market and find some less common, not very well worked genes, but have demonstrated that they have some amazing combos out there. And as an example for this, I want to highlight the Morph Furrow. So furrow is a somewhat new morph, but it hasn't gained a ton of traction, at least here in the United States. But the few furrow combos that have been hit and have been shown, like the Nyala furrow clowns that we hit a couple seasons ago, are absolutely beautiful. So I think that if you're trying to find something like this, where you can find a gene that not really anybody else has, and you can make a name for yourself in that project, but you don't have the money to buy into Cosmos, this is a method that you could do. We've been talking about originality in the form of the snakes, but there's also originality in our marketing and how we present our business. So if we are going to talk about a reptile live, which seems to be the most common and the easiest way to really market your reptile business online, almost all of the reptile lives right now, in my opinion, are so similar that they are nearly interchangeable, excluding the hosts. But nearly all of the guests that they bring on are the same guests that are shared throughout all of the different shows, because oftentimes the hosts are asking the exact same people to be on their shows. In addition, the formats are very, very similar. They're often talking about how the people got started, their advice on various different breeding questions, their advice on various different business questions, and what really cool animals they have made right now. But in my opinion, you could take the live reptile format and adjust it anyway by bringing in a concept that is really successful outside of ball pythons and outside of the reptile industry, and applying it to the ball python world in a way that nobody is doing, at least right now. And the example that I want to give is the podcast Hot Ones. So with Hot Ones, they take various different celebrities and they interview them, just like any other entertainment style talking head interview show. But while they're doing this, they are eating really, really spicy hot wings. So with this, there is a level of comedy that is brought in because the questions are being asked that are about people that are really interesting, while they are also suffering through these really hot, spicy wings, both the host and the guest. I think that this concept could potentially be applied to the reptile world and be really, really amusing, where you have the host and you have various different prominent people in the reptile hobby in person having an interview, kind of like what Cusco does at the Redline Report. But while they're doing the interview, they're eating really, really spicy chicken wings. So you have that comedic value as they're talking about various topics in the reptile industry. And if those topics happen to be quite spicy and controversial, I think that it would tie really well in the theme. And even though it is essentially a live reptile interview podcast, it would be significantly different and significantly more original for the reptile world. And I'm willing to bet that if it was executed well, it would do way better than most of the traditional live reptile podcasts. The second way that you can outcompete everybody else is to do whatever they are doing significantly better than them. And I think that people kind of get into this weird realm where they think that everything that we see in the ball python world, or anything that is subjective, doesn't have a way to be better than the other, because everything is based on your own tastes. And I don't think that this is true. We can all know if somebody draws a stick figure and they say, look at this work of art, that is not as impressive as somebody who can create hyper-realistic paintings, and that the person who can create hyper-realistic paintings is significantly better at art, at least in this one specific example, than the person who draws a stick figure. And the same thing happens in the ball python world. We know when people produce animals, if they are like, nothing special, not saying that the animals aren't cool, but that they just aren't very rare genes, they aren't very good combos, they're more mundane examples of the morphs that they are working with. And when somebody can create an animal that might have an incredible version of the morph and everybody can tell immediately, or that the combo is so insane, has never been done before, and it looks beautiful, that it catches people's interest. And both of these different aspects let us know that the second breeder did it way better than the first. And even though everybody has different tastes in the morphs that they like, we know when somebody has done something better. So I think that if you want to outcompete everybody else with your animals, there is a way to do it significantly better. So let's say that you have a pairing where you could potentially make a clown combo animal. Or you could have a pairing that could potentially make the same exact clown combo animal, but now it's double het for Xanthic and DG. That second pairing is going to be viewed as better than the first because it is significantly more powerful when it comes to breeding projects in the future. In addition, when it comes to your marketing, there are people who can absolutely kill it by taking their phone and recording some animals that maybe don't look good, but they have an insane personality. And there's also people who take their phone and that their videos are not nearly as engaging, even though they're both using their phone. And in this situation, the person with the really engaging personality is doing it better than the person who is essentially boring. And beyond the idea of just the personality, because that's something that's a little bit more difficult to change, when it comes to the production quality, if somebody is taking a picture or a video of their snakes just with their phone and the white balance is off and the lighting is terrible, versus somebody who is doing the exact same thing with the exact same animal, but it's with a really nice camera and the lighting is on point and it just looks absolutely beautiful, the second person is objectively doing it better. And in my opinion, I think that the second person is probably going to outcompete the first if they're trying to sell that exact same animal. The third aspect to outcompete everybody else is to have the things that you are doing be significantly more difficult to accomplish. And when it comes to the snakes, this is where all of the multi-recessives come in. Because you can take a het animal, pair it to a visual, and statistically, half of the clutch is going to be the visual animals that you want. But if you're working on something like a triple recessive project, and you are pairing, let's just say, a triple het to a triple het, it's very, very likely that you are going to go multiple entire clutches without getting the animal that you want. So when you finally do hit it, it was significantly more difficult, and therefore everybody knows how much more valuable that animal is, and it is going to be much more desirable to everybody else because they know how powerful it was, how rare it is, and the likelihood of a bunch more coming on the market is incredibly low given the difficulty of it. In addition, at a certain point of difficulty, people give up on it entirely. They think that the breeder is so far ahead, it's not even worth trying to compete with them, so they don't, and they go in a different realm. So if you are able to do stuff that is so difficult in the ball python breeding world, it's very likely that not only will you catch a bunch of interest based off of all of the other factors we've already talked about, it's also likely that people won't even try to come in and eat your lunch because they know how difficult it is and they don't think that they can do it themselves. When it comes to the marketing and business side of the world, we're going to go back to the Reptile podcasts. One, it's fairly easy to set up a StreamYard account and do multiple different interviews whenever you have the opportunity with various different breeders around the world virtually. But traveling across the world to interview these people in person is significantly more difficult. So when you see a situation where you have a well-known, well-liked breeder being interviewed on a remote podcast versus that exact same breeder being interviewed by somebody in person, the in-person interview is going to be perceived as better, and it likely is going to outcompete all of the other times that they appeared just on some random podcast, because everybody knows how much more difficult it is to go to these people in person and interview them that way. So again, making the difficulty higher is going to attract interest, and ultimately it's going to make it harder for other people to follow you and other people to compete with you in that space in the future. On the flip side of the difficulty, if you as a breeder are able to make the experience that people have with you so convenient that it makes everybody else in the hobby look like it's difficult to work with them, this is another avenue that you can use to outcompete all of the other breeders. So let's say that you're in a situation where one breeder says that they will only take cash, there is no payment plans at all, and if they don't buy right now, they need to get out of there because they are wasting the breeder's time. Versus you, who might say that you're willing to take pretty much whatever payment method that the customer wants, and you are are flexible and willing to work with them on payment plans, and you are willing to give them as much time as they need and answer as many questions that they want to ask in order to have the best customer service possible. In my opinion, the person who's willing to do all of these different things in the long run is going to vastly outcompete the person who's essentially difficult to work with. So if you are able to drastically increase the convenience for your customers, this is, in my opinion, the fourth way that new breeders can outcompete everybody else. The last avenue to outcompete everybody else deals more with the marketing side and not really with the animals. And this is to find ways to connect and be significantly more relatable to your audience than everybody else is. And this sounds a little bit weird, but when we're talking about social media in general, not just the reptile hobby, oftentimes I will see videos that are somewhat comedic in nature where it is a situation that I felt like was kind of silly that maybe Courtney and I have been in, but it's somebody else who, I don't know, some random stranger who is in the exact same situation and has the exact same thought process that we had, and it's really relatable. And this often makes me share it to Courtney, so that way it's like, oh yeah, that's 100% us. We don't have any original thoughts in the world because it seems like everybody else shares it. But what happens is it makes us feel a kinship to the person, to the creator that posted that content, because they are like us. And we can do the exact same thing in the reptile hobby. As you're able to find these points that are commonalities between you and your audience, if you keep building up these points, the people who look at you and are like, man, we could be friends if we knew each other in person, they are going to really want to support you, and it's going to increase their loyalty. In addition, away from the idea of comedic value and friendship, you can also go with the idea of like righteous justice. And there's lots of times in the ball python world and overall in social media where somebody will highlight a practice or an event that just wasn't good. Maybe the breeder did something really bad, or they treated somebody in a poor way, or it was a really, really poor interaction with a customer. And when they talk about this, and it's almost like going on a rant, there are going to be people who've experienced a similar negative thing, and they're going to be like, yes, finally somebody said it. Preach, I can't agree enough. And this is another way to be relatable because it's showing that you are like them. And if you can do this, those people that you connect with and those people that you relate to are much more likely to come to you in the future when they want to buy something versus somebody that they don't think is like them at all. So before we wrap up this video, I want to say that these are not mutually exclusive. In my opinion, the best businesses, whether it's reptile related or in any other industry, try to focus on all of these different things and incorporate all of them into their brands. And if you're able to do this, you can absolutely crush the competition and do really, really well, regardless of the industry that you are in. Also, we are coming real close to the Southeast Reptile Expo in Atlanta, Georgia on August 9th and 10th. So if you're in the area, definitely head out. We are going to be there and we can't wait. It is going to be a blast. But my name's Steven with Leviathan, and we will see you next week.
That's a sure way to kill 'em.